Hello and welcome back to Geek and Speak, the Geek and Seek podcast. Today, we are finishing a series that has been going on for a few months at this point. We are going over the top 20 commanders according to EDHRec. This is part 5. We have officially gone over, after this episode, the top 100 commanders on EDHRec. So if you've missed any of part 1, 2, 3, or 4, feel free to either watch that before or after this video. But we are officially finishing that. We're officially finishing the top 100 today, looking at the officially top 20 commanders, according to EDHRec. Should be a good time. Join with me today is Preston. How's it going, Preston?
Good. I'm excited. We're finally getting around to finishing this up. It's been a fun series to do, and I think this is going to be one of our more interesting episodes because of where we placed everything.
Yeah, I think so too. Jason. We also have Jason. How's it going?
Going just fine. It's going just fine. I'm excited for this. The top 20. There's a lot of good cards in here, obviously. But I think that we might surprise some people with our takes on some of these, and some of them might not be as surprising.
Yeah, Jason's had a weird start to 2025, but he's always happy to come talk about Magic the Gathering with his homies. So.
I love my boys, and I love some Magic the Gathering. And you there, get this person watching this, I love you too.
Hell yeah. And I am your host, Morgan. I share the love, likewise, with everyone here. I'm excited for this. I'm happy we're finally going to finish off this tier list. It's been 5 episodes that we've been doing this, and it's been really fun to see like what the top commanders are, as well as how everyone in our group feels about it. And a little bit of your feedback from the community as well. We've gotten a little bit of like comments being like, oh, what about this or that? So that's been really fun too. If you would like to support the podcast, you can do all the YouTube algorithm stuff, that being liking the video, leaving comments to keep the conversation going, subscribe if you have not already subscribed to Geek and Seek. We did pass 3,000 subscribers before the end of the year. That was nice. Thank you so much. And check out all of our other videos. We have 300 other videos on this channel. We have gameplay, other episodes of the podcast, video essays, stuff like that. Any of that sounds cool. It's really helpful for after you finish a video, go watch more of our videos. That's really helpful for the algorithm. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can financially support the show by heading over to patreon.com/geekandseekyoutube. All right. And as a reminder, in case you haven't seen part 1 through 4 of this series, just a reminder that our ranking criteria is not necessarily based on power. If it's in the top 100 commanders, there's a little bit of an expectation that these are probably at least moderately powerful, just because people like powerful cards. So we do kind of consider power level, but it's not like we're not ranking based on power per se in isolation. So we're mostly going off of, is it fun to play with, play against? Is it a unique design? Is it a commander that fills a niche need that maybe other commanders don't? So that's more of what we are looking for. With all of that said, Preston, do you want to lead us through the first card that we were talking about today?
Sure. First up, we have Arcades the Strategist. Me and you, Morgan, gave it an A, and Jason put it all the way up in an S. So we all really like Arcades. He is a 3/5 Elder Dragon for 1 green, white, and a blue, flying and vigilance. Whenever a creature with Defender enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card, and each creature you control with Defender assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power, and it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So this is a cool archetype, people kind of like Defenders before Arcades came out, wishing they could do something with them. And Arcades makes it a really strong deck, actually. Even if you build it on a budget, it can put in some real work.
That was the main reason that I put it in S tier. It is a very unique commander, because before this we didn't really have any Defender commanders that would do anything close to this powerful. But also it's one of those things where it's like you can spend $20 on this deck and you will win games. It's a really, really cool design. It's a strong card. And, I think that the big argument against Arcades is that, well, if you just remove Arcades, then the deck doesn't really do a whole lot because now you just have a bunch of defenders that can't attack. I mean, you're in blue and white, so realistically you're in colors that are going to be able to protect your commander in a variety of ways. Whether it's, playing counter spells to stop people from doing stuff. You could play bounce spells to put it back into your hand. White has a good amount of protection stuff in there. You get things, I can't think off the top of my head. But blue and white are pretty good colors for protecting. I would say the best colors out of the 5 for protecting your stuff. So, depending on what you put into the deck, you're going to be able to keep Arcades out. And then on top of that, he's only a 4-mana commander. So if you do have to cast him twice, you're paying 6 for the second time. And if you're casting him a third time, you're paying 8 for that time. So because you have green, you're going to be able to get the ramp out. So you theoretically should have enough lands out to cast Arcades. And I mean, I think about all the scenarios where Arcades goes away. If it's just getting rid of Arcades, as soon as you get Arcades back, your board state is once again just as effective. If the whole board gets wiped and Arcades goes away, you're rebuilding just like everybody else is. But all it's going to take is for you to get Arcades out and then play one defender, and you're probably going to be in a good spot to at least give yourself another turn or two to keep building up the board and getting back to a powerful position at the table. I think Arcades is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You hit on the green part with the ramp being really important because, yeah, this is one of those decks that the commander is absolutely essential. If the commander's not in play, the deck isn't doing a whole lot, so it really needs the commander in play. And so as a result, it becomes a must-kill commander. But because you have green, if you are able to keep drawing into your ramp spells and keep casting them, it keeps up with the commander tax, especially if you get to draw a couple cards off of Arcades. That's ensuring that you're hitting your land drops. That's ensuring that you're more likely to find your ramp spells, stuff like that. So that's really important. I actually love Arcades. I used to have an Arcades deck back in the day. Freaking loved it. It was so fun. Took it apart because it was too strong, actually. The reason I couldn't give it an S, though, like Jason, despite really, really liking this card, because it also is you guys already hit on this, but it fills a role that people wanted. People wanted a wall commander, and Arcades did that for us. A very strong one at that, too. The reason I can't give it an S is because it looks like the same deck no matter what. Like, 2 Arcades decks are going to look very similar to each other just because you're just going to play the best walls. And an example of that is when I had an Arcades deck, it was probably it wasn't I didn't go crazy on it, but it was $150 probably. It was, something like that. And then 2 years ago on the Christmas episode, Steven built it for Tommy on a $50 budget, and it was almost the same deck. The mana base was different. The mana base was a little more budget, but outside of that, and a couple randomly one-off expensive defender cards, the 99 outside of the mana base is almost always going to be the same in Arcades deck. So if you're really wanting to brew with the idea of creativity, there just aren't enough good defenders to justify that. It's just a lot of Arcades decks end up looking the same. So that's the only reason I couldn't give it an S. With that said, though, really cool, really strong, and a lot of fun to play with and against. So
last thing that I'll say about Arcades is that even if Arcades does get destroyed because you're playing with defenders, you've almost kind of pillow forted yourself so that if Arcades does get removed, it's still going to be hard for people to attack you because you have all these defenders out that have huge toughness or maybe indestructible or getting some sort of buff in some other way. So even if Arcades gets removed, you're probably going to have another turn to get him back out onto the board and then start doing stuff with your defenders again.
Yeah,
toughness.
I agree with that. All right, we're going to go ahead and put Arcades here in A. Jason, what do we got next?
So next up, oh gosh, make sure I pronounce this right. We have Pantlaza, Sun Favored. It's a 4/4 legendary creature dinosaur. It's 2, a red, a green, and a white. And it says, whenever Pantlaza, Sun Favored, or another dinosaur enters the battlefield under your control, you may discover X, where X is that creature's toughness. Do this only once each turn. Again, discover means that you exile a card from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card with mana value equal to the dinosaur that you just played or less. Equal to the no.
Yeah, it's based on the creature's
from the top of
toughness.
your library until you
With
exile
that-
a
with-
non-land card with the mana value or less.
Yeah, but I'm saying discover is you exile cards from the top, and then you basically it's basically Cascade, but instead of having less mana value, it can have the same mana value or less, and then you get to cast it.
I was saying the mana value of the dinosaur doesn't count. The toughness does. It checks the cards.
It checks the mana value of it. The toughness is checked to see how much you discover.
Yeah.
And not that we needed to power creep Cascade even more than we already did, but not only does Discover let you hit the same number value, but also you can choose whether or not to cast it. You can choose to put the card into your hand if now is not the time for it. For reasons. But yeah, that was a B for me, a C for Jason, and a B for Preston. I just feel okay about it. It's a dinosaur commander, and dinosaurs are cool. I like dinosaurs, but this is just not the most interesting one to me. I think the mechanic is clunky and kind of strong too. It's this really weird in between stage, and I just, the couple times I've played against it, I don't really like it. I'd rather play against some of the other dinosaur commanders.
See, that was my thought process too. I didn't think that it was necessarily like the strongest dinosaur commander out there, and I didn't think that it was necessarily going to be one of the more fun ones to play. Because I mean, if you're using the other dinosaurs, it's fine, but like if you're just looking at the commander itself, it's 6 mana or it's 5 mana off rip. So if it goes away, you're paying 7 mana to discover 4, and it just doesn't feel right. And then if it gets destroyed again, you're paying 9 to discover 4. It's just not.
It doesn't scale as well as Arcades does. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and there's some blink stuff in white, so you could definitely flicker it like that. But there's just not a. I'm not a huge fan of it as much as I am of other dinosaur commanders out there.
Yeah, you guys hit the nail on the head. As we'll get into it later, I definitely pick another dinosaur commander over this one. But I still gave it a B because, like, if you have the precon and maybe you've upgraded that a little bit, I think that's a perfectly valid reason to have this as the commander. But if you have the budget to build, like, the other dinosaur commander, I just think that's a better option. It does the big dinosaur thing better. Pantlaza is a good 99 card, but it does feel a little weak for how much mana you pay in the command zone.
Definitely feels like it'd be better in the 99 than in the command zone.
All that said, Pantlaza is still going to average out to a B, which is perfectly reasonable. All right, next up we have Chatterfang, Squirrel General. This is for 2 and a green, 3/3 Squirrel Warrior, but don't be fooled. This is a Golgari card. We'll get to it in a moment. It has Forest Walk, which means it can't be blocked as long as the defending player controls the forests. You're in green, you can play Yavimaya, so even your opponents who aren't playing green decks can still get got by that. If one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus that many 1/1 green squirrel tokens are created instead, and you can pay a black to sacrifice X squirrels, and target creature gets plus X minus X until end of turn. So it's a token commander, really. Like, people, I think the reason Chatterfang is so popular is because squirrels, and squirrels are just kind of fun. I think that's why Chatterfang is so popular, but it is just like a really good value token commander, because while you're making your tokens normally, you're already getting extra tokens. These are tokens that can be skull clamped, notably, but then it's also removal in the command zone. Even if you're not playing a squirrel deck and you're just playing token stuff, you get to keep Chatterfang around for a couple turns. You'll have enough squirrels that the activated ability actually can remove a decent amount of things, even if you're just playing token value and you're not necessarily a squirrel deck. So it's actually very strong. I gave it an A, and I've kind of already talked about why that is. I think as far as just like generic token commanders go, I think it's a little bit more interesting than some of the other options, and squirrels are just kind of funny. But then Jason and Preston gave it a B.
I only put it at B because I kind of wish it just went more into the squirrels. I think it would be more fun and interesting if instead of making those tokens plus the squirrels, you made double the amount of tokens, but you only made squirrels. I kind of wish that's what the card did.
Yeah,
or maybe like gave the squirrels force walk.
Yeah, it said if it said something like, if you would create one or more tokens, instead create that many or twice that many squirrels. So like you don't like get the other, like your tireless tracker doesn't make clues anymore. It just makes 2 squirrels. That would be kind of funny.
You could do that, or if you phrased it like, if one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, create twice that many squirrels. That way, would you rather have 4 2/2 zombies or 8 1/1 squirrels? It's like, man, especially with this commander, and especially with this commander, being able to sacrifice squirrels to either buff up your stuff slightly or kill your opponent's stuff, I think that trade-off is going to be pretty good. It's cool and it's definitely strong, but I feel like that it just turns into a generic Golgari tokens deck, and we got so many of those, and we have plenty of stuff like that I just think is a lot more interesting and a lot more fun. I do like Chatterfang. It's 3 mana and it's in green, so you're probably going to be able to keep it on the battlefield fairly easily, even if it gets destroyed a couple of times. It's not going to be too much mana to get it back out. And the Forest Walk is huge. I think that the Forest Walk is pretty good. Any type of evasion like that on a commander is always going to make it a more powerful card and it, potentially a much more fun thing to play. Not many people would expect to be taken out by commander damage from Chatterfang, but with that Forest Walk, it definitely could happen.
Yeah, I guess also notably, it has a lot of combos with it, which if you don't like combos, that would make you dislike Chatterfang. But like, for example, Steven has a Chatterfang deck, and it's his strongest deck. Not necessarily because he went all in on the deck, but it's just like accidentally he has like 3 different combos in that deck just because he's playing like things that synergize with the 99 and just accidentally ends up with combos. So as far as just like making sure Steven has like a deck that can actually end the game, and also Black just has good payoffs for sacrificing your tokens. Like, one of the problems with tokens is like, yeah, you have a bunch of these creatures, but like, what are you going to do with them? And Black is like, okay, well, as they're dying, I'm draining the table. So that's noteworthy as well. But Chatterfang will end up here in B. Preston, what do we got next?
All right, next up we have Shorikai Genesis Engine. You two gave it a B. I gave it a D.
Oh my god.
It is 2, a white and a blue for an 8/8 artifact vehicle. You can pay 1 and tap it to draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token with this creature crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. It has crew 8, so you can tap creatures that have at least 8 power to turn this vehicle into a creature for the turn. And it says Shorikai can be your commander, even though it technically shouldn't be able to usually.
So I understand why you don't like it. I think the main complaint about it is that everyone just turns it into value. So I think the reason people were so excited about it is because it's a vehicle that can be your commander. So, it's a commander for vehicle decks. And I think that's like valid. That's perfectly valid, especially because as you're doing the card advantage thing, you're getting these pilots, which are great at crewing vehicles. So there's definitely merit to that. But I used to have a Shorikai deck, and I originally built it as a vehicles deck. But as I upgraded it, it turns into just let's just do really degenerate things with Shorikai, and it becomes less of a vehicle deck. So when I rebuilt my vehicle deck, Shorikai's in the 99. It is not the commander anymore. So is that kind of where you become low on it? Is that if you're building around it as your commander, you just start doing degenerate artifact untappy things with it?
Yeah, the only reason I don't have it in F is for like the 3 people who have actually just built this as a big cool Voltron-y deck. If you're one of the single digit people who's actually tried to do that and you stuck with it, congratulations, you have a cool deck. The rest of you are bad people.
I think that this is just an interesting commander. I think that it's really cool that vehicles got something like this that's this powerful. I kind of have always wanted to see a Shorikai vehicles deck go up against an Arcades defenders deck. And I kind of feel like Arcades would edge it out. I think that green is that big of an advantage for it. But the pilots that this makes are really, 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 really cool. I think that it's a really fun way to make your vehicles a lot easier to crew, and you can start doing really fun, cool things with your vehicles and start swinging people out like that. And, you know, the fact that he's an 8/8, commander damage is a real threat here. Like, there's a high probability that at least one person in a 4-player game is going to die to Shorikai.
That will happen a non-zero amount of times. So, all that said, Shorikai will average out to somewhere in top of C, bottom of B. We'll put it in bottom of B for now, while we kind of readjust later as necessary. Jason, what do we got next?
So, next we have a MDFC commander. The commander side, the actual legendary creature, is Esika.
I've always said Esika.
Esika.
That God of the Tree. It's 1 and 2 green for a 1/4 legendary creature god. She has Vigilance and tap, add 1 mana of any color, and then she also has other legendary creatures you control have Vigilance and tap, add 1 mana of any color. So already kind of showing up to be like a Legends Matters deck. And then the backside is an enchantment. The backside is an enchantment that's called the Prismatic Bridge, and it's 1 of each color. So it's Wooburg for a legendary enchantment. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature or a planeswalker card. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on your bottom of your library in a random order. So, Morgan and I gave this a B, and Preston gave it a C. I know, Morgan, do you still have this deck, or did you take it apart? So, what I love about this is that you can build this deck to care about one side. You can build this deck to care about both sides. Or you can just build it to be just a Legends deck and use this if you need to. Because you really could just cast it as a creature to be able to generate a whole bunch of mana, swing with all your stuff, and then tap all your stuff for mana and cast more legendary stuff that way. Or you could just use it as the Prismatic Bridge if you need to. If you are trying to manipulate the top of your deck to get stuff out for free, you could definitely do it that way. There's a lot of different cool things that you could do with it, even though it is kind of just Legends themed. The backside is a lot less like specific to Legends because it will just let you get any creature from the top. But I think that it's really, really powerful because that it's only 3 mana to cast as a commander. And even if you're casting it as the enchantment, it's 5 mana, it's 1 of each color. In a 5-color deck, you should be able to reliably get all your colors out. I get, does commander tax go on the enchantment side? It would, right? There's no reason why it wouldn't.
And they share the tax.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can't
So-
like play Esika for 3 mana, it dies, and still play the backside for 5. You would now pay 7 for the back. Yeah.
And because, you know, you have access to every single color, You could play those bounce spells where you could put it back into your hand if you want to cast it for the other side. I just think that you build this deck, you're going to have a lot of fun with it.
So I think the problem with it is that the front and back side are so drastically different. So on one hand, Esika is the front side cares about legendary creatures. I mean, bare minimum, it's a mana dork in your command zone. Some number of decks might just like having that. But it turns all of your legendary creatures into mana dorks, which opens up the opportunity for like crazy big mana things. Or maybe you have, I don't know, there's cards that care about when your creatures are tapped or untapped. So maybe you're doing something funky like that. And I would say nowadays this is not one of the better legendary creature commanders. I would say this isn't one of the better ones anymore. I think it goes in the 99 of most of those decks. But I think at the time when it came out, it might have been in the conversation for the best legendary creature commanders. But then the backside is just generic value. And I think that's where people kind of get rubbed the wrong way by it, is that on one hand, you can just kind of do whatever. So like the Esika deck that I have, I'll never cast the front side. It's always the bridge that I cast because it's my energy deck. There's not a good 5-color energy commander. So the bridge just lets me go until I hit one of my creatures, and I'm going to get value because most creatures in energy decks say when it enters, you get X amount of energy. So it's just a good way to keep guaranteeing I'm going to keep getting more energy. And a lot of people just do that. A lot of people just, I'm never going to cast the front side. I'm just going to cast the back, which is kind of boring because then you're just going to hit some big scary creature, or it also hits planeswalkers. So it's one of the better options for a planeswalker commander if you're in 5-color. So, I mean, I kind of like it in the sense that it's open-ended. You can build it a lot of ways. But at the same time, like, in my short amount of time that I've been working for Commander Clash, I've seen the Prismatic Bridge an ungodly amount of times. Just because if you just need like a 5-color deck, it's one of the better just generic 5-color options.
Yeah, to me, Isika is like an A tier commander, and the bridge is like a D tier. So that's why I settled on like around B, or I mean C. Like I think Esika, you can do really fun things because it's a mono green commander, but you can play other colors with it because of the backside. So I kind of like doing that if you build around that. But everyone always builds around the bridge. Like almost every single time you see someone build this deck, it's the bridge that they play with. Like 1 out of every 100 people maybe plays the front side, and I just don't think the backside is that interesting to me.
Yeah, that's all fair. We'll put Esika here in B, just to make this look more diverse. We'll go ahead and move Shorikai down to top of C, I guess. We can revisit that later. Next up, we have Nekusar, the Mindrazer, which is actually pretty old school. This is from Commander 2013. So it's kind of cool that we got some old commanders towards the top of the list. But it's for 2, a blue, a black, and a red. So 5 mana. It's a 2/4 zombie wizard. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. So it's group hug, right? It's fine. And then whenever an opponent draws a card, Nekusar, the Mindrazer, deals 1 damage to that player.
Oh, did you forget about that part?
Yeah. So you're intentionally playing like these group huggy cards that are like, well, not even group huggy cards because you could also do like wheels and stuff. You're just making your opponents draw extra cards and you're killing them that way. And on the reason I went B and then Jason and Preston went C. The reason I couldn't go lower than a B is because this is a way to make those group huggy cards actually end games. Because sometimes you just like, you give your opponents all these cards and they're just like, thanks, now I'll kill you. Whereas now Nekusar's like, yeah, I'm giving you cards, but like I'm putting a clock on you. And you're also in red, so you can do like damage doublers and stuff like that. So it actually is like you're playing these group huggy cards, but you're actually like going for a kill. Maybe I could go lower just because you're playing wheels too, and you could probably play like Narset or Notion Thief or something. That would be pretty gross, but like if you promise not to do that, then I could say it's a B.
See, I couldn't do higher than a C. I couldn't. I almost put it at D.
Wow.
Well, for the reason that you said, it's wheels and then Notion Thief and Narset. I've seen that, and I have been victim to that in so many games where someone played Narset. And here's my point to what you said about it putting a clock on the game. It still is like, group hug, I'm giving you cards, but you're just going to kill me. But instead of being like, thanks for all these cards, now I'm going to kill you, it's, thanks for all these cards, now I have to kill you. Or I am going to die. So, I just think that Nekusar paints too much of a target on your back. It leads to too many not fun in-game experiences. And this is a similar one to Arcades, in my opinion, where a lot of the Nekusar decks look the same. They're trying to do the same thing, trying to get everybody to draw cards, deal a lot of damage, double that damage, triple that damage, and really kind of make people not have a good time. So I really couldn't do higher than a C for it. It is strong, though. I will not deny how strong this is. But it being as strong as it is one of the reasons why I'm not a fan.
Yeah, back in the day, this used to be one of the best commanders, so I probably would have put it in F when it was that oppressive. But nowadays, I just put it at C because, like you guys said, most of the decks look the same because you're playing the wheel version. You're not playing the group huggy, like doing the group hug thing, but you're making the game go a little faster by also dealing damage. You're doing the wheel thing because if not, you're going to get the same amount of hate as the wheel version of the Nekusar deck without actually winning the game. So you kind of have to do it if you're going to build him. Because people are going to assume that's what you want to do.
Yep. So, Nekusar, sorry, Classic. You're going here in C. All right, Preston, what do we got next?
All right. Next up, we have Jodah the Unifier. Morgan put it at a D, I put it at a D, and Jason put it at a C. Ooh, Jason really likes this one.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite.
Okay, so it's a 5/5 human wizard legendary creature, one of each color. Legendary creatures you control get +X, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control. And then whenever you cast a legendary spell from your hand, you exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a legendary non-land card with lesser mana value. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
So basically, Cascade for legendaries, kind of.
It's Cascade for legendaries, but the Cascade is restricted to cards you play from your hand.
Ooh. What a great downfall you have to embark on to make this commander work.
Well, I mean, that way you're just not cascading into a legendary creature, which then cascades into another legendary creature, which then cascades into another legendary creature, which then cascades into another legendary creature. It's avoiding that.
I hate this commander so much.
It just doesn't do anything fun.
Oh, it kills people
like,
really
there's nothing,
fast.
like, unique about it. Oh, yeah. Very fun. It's maybe the most boring Legendaries Matters commander option there is.
Which is unfortunate, because it's also, probably the strongest. Like, okay, so there's, Sisay, right? Like, Sisay is pretty strong, but it's slow. And then there's, the Planeswalker one, the Mardu one, which is pretty strong, but it's kind of wonky. It's very restrictive on which cards you probably want to play. So just, in a vacuum, the Jodah the Unifier is probably your strongest option for Legendaries Matter, but it is so boring, and you're just going to kill everyone really fast, which, I mean, I'm kind of here for aggro. We have those times where we're like, oh, we have time for one more game if it's a quick game, and then it's not a quick game. So, it's kind of nice to have, a strong, fast deck, and, maybe Jodah's that for you, but, man... Every time I see it, I just groan. It's just so miserable to play against. It's so strong. Because once it hits the battlefield, it's kind of too late. The buffing effect happens without having to do any extra work. If you already have some creatures in play, Jodah comes down, they get the buff. So, yeah.
Well, even if he's the only one, he's a 6/6 immediately because he buffs himself.
So, I would be right there at D with you guys, but I put it at C because I do think that Jodah requires a lot more setup in order to actually be good immediately. And if you don't have this setup, it takes you a couple of turns with Jodah to make your board state really, really bad and oppressive. And even just one turn of somebody doing something really crazy with Jodah, assuming that it's not in a situation where the game is going to end right there, everybody else at the table is like, okay, so they're the problem, right? We all understand that they're the problem. Let's throw all our resources at that person. I gave it a C because I think that in responsible playgroups, they will see this and they will be like, we all need to make sure that that person dies first or we are all going to lose this game.
Yeah, I think the only fun thing you could maybe do is ignore the creature part and do like legendary sorceries or something. Or maybe like some enchantments or artifacts. Like maybe that would make it a little more interesting, but even then I feel like it would still be pretty oppressive.
Well, and planeswalkers count as legendary as well. So I guess that's also
all
an
planeswalkers
option.
are legendary.
Yeah. All that to say, Jodah down here in D. Do you guys remember where original Jodah was? Because we talked about that at some point in this series. I don't remember. I feel like we were okay on it. I felt like it was probably a B commander or something. So it's quite the drop off.
Wasn't it in like the second part that we did?
Yeah.
I
The
can't remember
viewers
off the
will
top of my
go
head
watch
either.
all the parts they haven't seen and let us know in the comments, right, guys? Yeah.
I do want to say though, I think Sisay Weatherlight Captain is the best Legends commander.
Yeah.
Just want to put that out there.
I would say if you know it's not going to be an aggro game, it's very strong. It's just a little bit slower, so you got to make sure you're not in like a super aggro game. Jason, what do we got next?
I feel bad. I'm taking all the dinosaur commanders, and I feel like these, like Preston should have these. But this is Gishath, Sun's Avatar. It's a 7/6 legendary dinosaur avatar for 5, a red, a green, and a white. It has trample, vigilance, and haste, and it says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library, put any number of dinosaur creature cards from among them onto the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Morgan and I gave this an A, and Preston gave it an S. So I think we all know why Preston gave it an S. I couldn't put it at S because Gishath just it becomes too oppressive really, really quickly. But I gave it an A because I think it's the best dinosaur commander, and I think that whenever it does the thing, even though it's really oppressive and you're like, oh no, there's no hope for me, I'm going to lose this game, it's not a feel bad. You get to see some really big, giant, stompy dinosaurs hit the battlefield, and you're like, oh wow, that was really cool. I mean, I'm going to die, but it was really cool. So I think Gishath is one of those ones that it's fun to play against as much as it is to play with, because even if you're able to overcome Gishath, it really feels like an accomplishment because you're like, that player was going out of control, doing some really crazy stuff, and I was still able to come out on top. So I think that Gishath makes for a fun play experience whether you're playing with the deck or you're playing against the deck.
Yeah, I think I agree that if you're playing Dinosaur Typal, this is your best option. It's just the most interesting. And if you can, it's 8 mana, but like, man, if you get there, oh my god, this is so epic. So it's an almost perfect commander design in the sense that it's this giant creature with awesome art, and it does this big, epic effect, but you're not 100% sure how it's going to end up. And that's exciting. And that's what is so cool about Commander. So it's almost a perfect commander. The reason I couldn't give it an S is mostly because I've seen it whiff. I've seen someone take 7 Gishath damage and they flip into 1 dinosaur. That could be the best dinosaur in their deck. I don't know if that's worth 8 mana. So that's like the one thing like that's the biggest reason I could give it an S is because like, man, I want a little bit more consistency out of my command zone. I don't need like perfect consistency. I don't need like something crazy, but like I've seen that happen. That's a real bummer. But I will say that it's basically a perfect design as far as like dinosaur commander goes.
The last thing that I will say, that I'll let Preston kind of go on his spiel about it, is I don't necessarily agree with you on flipping over one dinosaur being worth 8 mana, because that's not really what you're getting.
Well, it's also 7
You're getting
commander
2
damage.
dinosaurs. It's a 7/6 commander with vigilance, trample, and haste, so it's vigilance. So it's going to remain up as a blocker even after you attack. It's a formidable thing that people aren't necessarily going to want to swing to or even have the ability to swing into. And because it's in red, you're going to have the ability to get extra combat steps. So, and it's not like this is a once per turn type of thing. If you get multiple combats and you keep hitting people with Gishath, you can just keep revealing cards from the top until you get to another dinosaur. So I think it's a little bit better in that sense, because you're never really just getting one dinosaur for 8 mana.
Well, and 7 commander damage is nothing to scoff at either, right? Like that's something to worry about.
Hit somebody 3 times, they're
I'd be
done.
a little worried. I'd be a little concerned. But Preston, tell us we're all wrong and that this should be a unanimous S.
Okay, well, so when Morgan said, like, it does feel bad when that happens, it does. I can assure you, as a person who's hit someone with a shaft and hit nothing, not even just one, I've hit nothing before. Yes, multiple times in a row. I think one time I got 3 in a row where I did not hit a dinosaur somehow.
Wow.
That was my older version, which wasn't as good, but still, that feels bad. But, oh, when the deck's working, it is the best feeling in the world. You put down 6 dinosaurs in one turn. You just dealt 7 commander damage. You have Pantlaza, so you're discovering. you have the one dinosaur who gains life equal to the toughness of your creatures coming in. You hit Zakama. When the deck works, it's worth all the times it doesn't. It's perfect. It's beautiful.
See, here's another thing.
Win big.
Go ahead, Preston. Keep going. Sorry.
I was just gonna say you pay big, but then you win big, and it's fantastic.
Even if you're building this deck on a budget and you don't want to spend a whole lot of money on the really good dinosaurs like Zakama, you could throw changelings in there. You could just throw some good changelings in there, and it'll work.
No.
I'm saying you could.
Don't be the false prophet. If you're building the dinosaur deck, you put in the dinosaurs. If you don't have a budget, you put the bad 10-cent dinosaur in. That's better than a changeling. Don't lead the people astray, Jason. Yeah. That's one of the best cards in the deck, thank you.
Okay, but don't tell me you can't do it. Maybe you shouldn't, but you can't tell me you can't.
Can I actually...
No, there's no point.
As we're saying here talking about it, I'm gonna give the viewers a peek behind the curtain. So, as we've gone through this series, we have noticed that we have never had a collective S tier commander. And we kind of sat down, did our notes today, looked at the ratings, and we're like, oh, it's happening again. So we're like, oh, maybe we do an episode in a few weeks where we're like, the hunt for the S tier commander or something like that. And we like hash it out with all the 8 tiers from the series. But as we're saying here, I think I have to change it to an S.
If you change it to an S, I'll change it to a B. This cannot be an S tier. This can't be.
All right.
Stop being a hater.
I don't believe in it as an S tier commander.
All right, well, let the record show it's gonna be an A, but I tried.
Put it at the top of A. We can keep it at the top of A for the rest of the list. It can be the best card in the A tiers. Right. I'm fine with that.
I tried, Preston.
Don't worry, it'll be in that S tier when we do that video in a couple weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to do that.
All right. Next up, we have Wilhelt the rotcleaver, which is for 2, a blue and a black. It's a 4-mana 3/3 zombie warrior. This is the face commander from the zombie pre-con that came out with Midnight Hunt, I want to say. Whenever another zombie you control dies, if it didn't have Decayed, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. As a reminder, that means that the creature cannot block, and when it attacks, you sacrifice it at the end of combat. And then at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice a zombie. If you do, draw a card. So it's a zombie commander that's creating zombie tokens for you and also drawing you cards along the way. As the zombie player of the group, I don't actually love this card. I gave it a B. Jason and Preston gave it an A. So the reason I couldn't give it anything lower than a B is just because it's just really good. But the reason I couldn't give it anything higher is because it's kind of boring. This falls in that category of commanders where it's like 3 or 4 mana, start drawing cards if you're doing your thing. And that's just really boring to me in modern commander design. And I feel like the Innistrad, end of 2020, 2021, that era, that's some of the worst offenders of that commander design. And I just think there's more interesting zombie commanders as well. But what do you guys think?
I think that it's a fun zombie commander. I think that it's good. I think that it's enjoyable to play. I think that it's an easy deck to build.
It is
even
easy
if you
to
don't
build.
Even if you don't get the precon that it comes with, you could just get this card as a commander and then just start using bulk zombies that you have. I just think that it's a fun deck to play against because it's one of those ones where you can either really keep it under control or it runs wild and just takes over games. There is some combo potential here. I cannot remember the cards that go into the combo where you just make infinite zombies.
Well, I can tell you that I took my zombie deck apart and I'm having to rebuild it for a video that's coming in the near-ish future. In a couple months, I had to rebuild my zombie deck for. And not only did I originally was going to have Wilhelt the commander. I took it out of the command zone. It's in the 99. I took it out of the command zone because I realized it was too strong in the command zone, mostly because of combo potential. And then after I built the 99, I realized there were still combos in the deck. So I kept nerfing the deck. I was like, wait, no, stop. 2-card infinites. Wait, stop. But yeah, it is very strong.
I actually don't think it's the strongest zombie commander, and I do agree the second ability is kind of boring. Play more, win more, typical commander precon design. But I really like that first ability. That's why I was willing to give it a slightly higher grade than you did. It's just that infinite zombie horde. That's just really cool to me. That's what zombies want to do. That's zombie media. You kill one more is there to take its place. I like it.
But it's not infinite. It doesn't scale unless you're just because they can't block. So you want to attack.
You know what I meant.
Decay.
Quit being annoying.
Oh, whatever.
But by the time they die, you have other zombies. It's a zombie deck.
Yeah. All right. Well, all that to say, Wilhelt is an A. All right.
And it kind of deals with board wipes a little bit. That's cool.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Preston, what do you got next?
All right. Next up, we have Isshin. 2 Heavens is 1. Let's see. You gave it an S. Me and Jason both gave it an A.
You know what? Hang on a second.
I
mean, if that's how we're going to do it, I'll go down to a B. Okay, you two gave it an S.
The same thing that I did with Gishath.
Because I feel like this deserves to be an S tier commander more than
Gishath
does. Yeah.
Well, you know what? We'll wait for that video just so we can hash this all out.
All right. What is
let me read
Isshin
it.
2 Heavens as 1 do, Preston?
It is a 3/4 legendary creature human samurai for a red, a white, and a black. If a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. It's just a really good aggro deck. You can build it on a budget. There's the optimized versions are probably going to look the same, but you can do some interesting stuff with this. Some cards that you might not ever run in Commander because they're kind of mid when you only get it once. I like it. You guys both like it. Tommy has it. It's fun to play against. Yeah.
Yeah, and Tommy has like an unoptimized version of it, and I still enjoy playing against it because like the value is just so neat. And Preston's right. Like there's cards that it's like I don't want to spend 4 mana on that, but then you're like, oh, 4 mana, I get to do it twice. Okay. And I feel like Isshin is like this perfect blend of, yeah, there are like some cards that are just like kind of generically good that are going to go in here. But then you also have some number of cards that you're going to play that are like only good in this kind of deck. So it's a really nice blend of the kinds of cards that go in the 99. And yeah, it's aggressive. And I've, over the last year and a half, I've grown to like aggro a lot more. So I'm high on it.
I moved mine up to an S because when I thought about it, I was like, this is actually a commander where you can have a lot of fun, even if you're not doing a whole lot of stuff. Because it just says if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger. So if your opponent attacks with something and it causes something that you have to trigger, that triggers an additional time. Excuse me. So that's why I think that this is a more worthy of an S tier than Gishath, because Gishath is much, much, much more dependent on you doing stuff, whereas this, you don't necessarily have to do stuff. If you have some enchantments or something that do things whenever your opponents attack, as long as you have Isshin out, that's going to do stuff and you're going to get value off of that. So I really like Isshin. I love the color combination. You know, Mardu is such a cool color combination to play with. And I really think that because it's Mardu, it really like incentivizes you to become a better Magic player because you don't have as much interaction as far as stopping your opponents from doing.
Well, you have plenty of interaction, but it's all like removal.
Well, that's kind of what I mean.
Well, you got protection too in white. You know, you have like flawless maneuver and stuff like that.
You don't have counter spells.
Yeah. No. You got the mana tithe.
Oh, and then there's a lapse of certainty
or whatever it's called.
Yeah. Oh, there's the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, but Pyroblast is just for blue.
Lord of the Rings, like it's not a counter spell. It's like return a spell to its owner's hand from Lord of the Rings. It's 2 mana, draw a card.
Reprieve.
That card slaps. It overperforms.
That card actually goes pretty hard. All right, I retract what I said.
All right. Well,
also
go ahead.
I was just gonna say one last thing. This is one of those decks where if the commander's out, you're obviously doing really great most of the time. But even if he's been taken out and you don't have the mana for him, your deck's still going to be able to do stuff because all of your cards have a triggered ability.
Yeah.
So it's not like the end of the world if the commander's not out. So I do like that.
All right, well, we'll put Isshin like tied with Gishath, and it will be part of our.
He can ride Gishath's back.
Yeah. Oh,
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
All right, Jason, what do we got next?
Oh, wait, one more thing. We did forget to mention it is Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original art. That's very important.
That is important.
That's you and McGregor for sure.
All right, what do we got next, Jason?
Next, we have Kaalia of the Vast. It's a 2/2 legendary creature, human cleric for 1, a white, a black, and a red. It has flying. It says whenever Kaalia of the Vast attacks an opponent, you may put an angel, demon, or dragon creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking that opponent.
Such enthusiasm. Why do you hate this?
Morgan gave it an A because he's a psycho. Preston gave it a B, and I gave it a C. I hate Kaalia. I hate her. I hate her so much. It's such a horrible deck to play against. You literally get 2 turns, and you're pretty much dead. You're freaking dead. There's so many good angels, demons, and dragons that just can come onto the battlefield. It's like they're tapped and attacking, and then you just put them onto the battlefield. So you have to counter Kaalia's ability in order to stop that from happening, or have mana up for a removal spell before the creature actually does damage to you, or have blocks.
Okay, Jason.
You know how many times? I actually have to make sure that this is the card I'm thinking of.
While Jason's looking that up.
Do you know how many freaking times that someone has dropped a Master of Cruelties on me with Kaalia, and I've gone to 1 and then died that same turn because I get hit with the Master of Cruelties and then I get hit with something else? I hate this card. I hate it. I would give it a D. I would give it an F, honestly, if I didn't have to be somewhat objective and be like, yeah, this is a strong card. It's not a bad card. But I do not like Kaalia.
Okay, so I will admit that I am looking at it with rose-colored glasses in the fact that it's one of the OG made for commanders. Like, it's from Commander 2011. It's an OG. And I've seen a lot of Kaalia decks over the years. And I've obviously had games like that, Jason, where I just die really fast. But for the most part, it's just, ooh, cool big creatures. And there's so many other busted big creature decks that this just, if anything, I should give it a lower rating because it's not that good anymore. That's my argument, because it's 4.
I completely disagree. It's still really strong.
It's 4 mana. It doesn't have haste. It doesn't have protection. It's only a 2/2. And you have to have a bunch of like lands and card draw and ramp and utility stuff and removal in your deck. So even once you get to this point where Kaalia is on board and you can attack with it, you probably only have like 1 creature in your hand. So it's actually probably not even that good by today's standards. But as far as big dumb creature decks go, this is just one of the more interesting options, if you ask me. If you want to do Mardu Dragons, cool. You want to do Mardu Demons? Odd, but okay. You want to do Mardu Angels? That sounds epic. Like, that sounds like my favorite way if you're going to do Angels is to go Mardu, go with Kaalia. And then I think, like, the best of the best is that you just play your couple favorite Angels, your favorite couple Demons, your favorite couple Dragons, just good value creatures. As far as big dumb creature decks go, this is one of the more interesting options to me. And it's not that good anymore.
I will not continue my rant on why I hate Kaalia. Go ahead, Preston.
So I'm in the middle. I'm B between the A and C. I think Kaalia has 4 main ways to build it, and I think the different ways you build it gives it a different rating. I think if you do dragons, D tier deck. Don't like it, don't want to play against it, don't want to see it, bad. If you do angels or you mix all 3 together, B tier, fine, whatever, cool. Now if you do demons, I think that's like A tier. I actually think Mardu Demons is the cool one to me. I don't necessarily want to play it against it often, but I think that would be the more interesting one, because I feel like most people who play Kaalia tend to lean towards the angels and dragons because they're better. Like, it's an angel and dragon deck with Master of Cruelty in it.
It's
like
all
1 or 2
bad.
demons.
It's all so bad.
I'm not like ready to die for Kaalia or anything. I'm not gonna like fight you tooth and nail. I just like some potential versions of the deck a little more.
I'll tell you this: if I am at a table and someone's playing Kaalia, I am petitioning so hard before the game starts. We got to kill the Kaalia player first, or we are gonna lose.
Oh yeah, probably.
Whatever, man. I'm gonna. This is a B of a B commander. And that's probably where it belongs.
Put it at the top of B. I will concede that. Put it at the top of B.
I mean, Preston also gave it a B, right? So, yeah, it's okay I think it's okay where it is. So next up, word vomit. This is Sauron the Dark Lord. For 3, a blue, a black, and a red. So it's a massive 7/6 for 6 mana. Avatar Horror. It has Ward. Sacrifice a legendary artifact or legendary creature. So that means if an opponent targets it, you counter that ability or spell unless they pay the word cost. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you amass Orcs 1, which means you create if you don't have an Orc army. Okay, so not only is this word vomit, but now I have to explain what each word vomit is. So amass Orcs 1 means that if you don't have an Orc token, you make a 0/0 Orc token and put a +1/+1 counter on it. If you already have one, you just put another counter on it and it gets bigger. And then whenever an army you control deals combat damage to a player, the ring tempts you. Jason, just put the reminder card on the ring tempts you up on screen. I'm not reading that. It's a bunch of value.
I would not ask you to do that.
Every time the ring tempts you, you get some incremental value based on what the creature is that is your ring bearer. And then finally, when the ring tempts you, you may discard your hand if you do draw 4 cards. So first off, I think it's really interesting that we're this high up on the list and we have a Universes Beyond commander here. I think that's interesting. Also interesting is that in the top 100 commanders that we talked about, correct me if you guys remember better than I do, but I think the only Universes Beyond commanders we saw were Lord of the Rings. I think that's noteworthy. I may be misremembering, but that's what I...
Isn't Gearson Starn one of them?
Yes, we did talk about that. That's from Warhammer. Good call. We also, I believe, we probably...
And the Mothman? Was he one?
Okay, yeah, so forget everything I said.
I feel like Marnius Calgor was on there too.
Oh, that might have been true too. All right, so completely forget what I said. But it is interesting that we have a Lord of the Rings commander this high up. Just saying. Overall, yeah, I mean, Sauron is like... It just does so much. So it is a lot to keep track of. But there's cool things you can do with it because you're always going to have access to these orc armies. Your opponents are going to what? They're not going to play spells, not going to give you an orc army. You're going to have an orc army, so you can do things with them. You can sacrifice them for value. You can fling them if they get really big. I don't know. And then with the ring tempting you, you could play into that a little bit if you want. And then the discard your hand, draw 4 actually seems really good. If you're trying to set up some big reanimation turn, or you just have a bunch of cards that you can play out of your graveyard in one way, shape, or form. I just think that there's a lot of cool things you can do with it. So I gave it an A. Oh my god, it's A's across the board. That was easy.
Yep. We're all really high on it. It's Sauron, dude. It's the Dark Lord. I mean, he's the one Lord of the Ring, and he does not share power. Like, I think that this card is very strong. The ward ability, first of all, like, there's often times where people just can't pay that. Like, you just don't have a legendary artifact, or you don't have a legendary creature that you're willing to sacrifice, your commander, in order to do something to it. So a lot of the time, Sauron is just, you just can't do anything about it without, like, wiping the board or blocking it, like, and dealing, like, combat damage to it. But then I think just the flavor of each ability is just perfect. That's my favorite part about all of these Universes Beyond cards, is when the flavor is on point. Because it's like, Sauron makes the orcs because he's making his army. He's attacking with his army because he wants to go out, he wants to get the ring so that he could dominate Middle-earth. And, you know, the ring tempting you when you discard your hand to draw 4 cards, it's making absolutely whatever sacrifice necessary to win the war. So, I really like Sauron. I love the flavor behind it. I love the Lord of the Rings. I think this is a really cool commander to build and a really fun commander to play.
Yeah, he's big, he's strong, and as for flavor, Word Vomit is the most flavorful thing in any Magic card ever, because this is J.R.R. Tolkien we're talking about, the man who thought anyone wanted to read 100 songs over the course of one of his novels. Everyone skips every single one of them, but, you know, he still did it, because he's just that guy.
He wrote Lord of the Rings as an excuse to use these made-up languages he made up.
Yeah, I was going to say, Buddy created more words than Dr. Seuss.
All right, all that to say, Sauron, boom, A. All right. Preston, what do we got next?
All right. Next up, we have Edgar Markov. Let's see. Oh, there we go.
I just looked at our ratings for this one.
Hey, speaking about unanimous, we all gave it a D.
Oh, we can't.
So it's 3 in Mardu for a 4/4 legendary creature vampire knight. He has Eminence, everyone's favorite ability. Whenever you cast another vampire spell, if he is in the command zone or on the battlefield, you make a 1/1 black vampire creature token. He has first strike and haste, and whenever he attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. God, he's just so miserable. He's too strong. He's boring. I love Tommy, and I'm glad he has a really powerful deck, but I just don't like this card.
Yeah, man. The problem is...
None of us do.
This is the most egregious example of Eminence, in my opinion. I think just Eminence in general is like a messed up OP mechanic. And even like the versions of Eminence, I'm like, yeah, it's not that bad. It's like, I still don't like it as a design. this is the worst one. Because, like, the optimal version of Edgar is you play just a bunch of cheap, value-y vampires, and then you get to the mid to late game, assuming you got to keep your board, you finally cast Edgar, and then you have, like, a buff on them. Or you play, like, a Cathar's Crusade or something, and you're growing them as you're going anyways. It's just, you go so wide. Vampires don't really care about dying. You have, like, blood artists and stuff. Man, it's just, not a fan.
Yeah, it's oppressive, it's gross, the Eminence ability is, like, just nuts. The fact that you don't even need him out there to actually build a massive board state is crazy. And then when he does hit the battlefield and attacks, you're just, your board is so wide at that point, you're generating so much power at one instance, it's just not fun to play against.
Yeah.
And another thing that sucks is if you don't play Edgar as your vampire commander, you have to have a reason to justify it, because none of them are half as strong as he is. They're just not.
Which is too bad, because there are other cool vampire commanders. It's just that Edgar's stronger than all of the other ones. So.
And it gives you all the colors you want.
Well, here's the problem: is there's this really, I can't remember the name of it. There's a Grixis one from Streets of New Capenna that is super cool, but it's way worse than Edgar Markov. So why ever play it? So yeah. Anyways, that's a D. Jason, what do we got next?
So next we have Miirym, Sentinel Wyrm. It's a 6/6 legendary creature dragon spirit for 3, a green, a blue, and a red, and it has flying and ward 2. It says whenever another non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of it, except the token isn't legendary if that dragon is legendary. Making copies of your dragons and avoiding the legend rule so you don't have to sacrifice anything. Morgan has this deck, or had this deck, and it's just, it's not the most fun to play against. It's pretty oppressive. It's pretty gross. Morgan gave it a B. A little bit of bias there. B for bias. I gave it a C, and Preston gave it an F. Preston, why do you hate this card so much?
The only way you beat this deck is if all 3 other players are having the best game of their life. It's miserable. You can't do anything. You wipe the board, it has a board state the next turn, because it's green, it's blue. Red doesn't do anything for the 99 besides putting the dragons.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say most of the best dragons are red, which is where you actually like are able to close out the game. But yeah, like green is giving you the ramp, blue is giving you counter magic, and some other shenanigans. Like for example, like Thassa Deep Dwelling is a card that I have in my Miirym deck. It's just like at your end step, flicker something, because Miirym just cares about entering. It doesn't care about casting. So you just flicker your scariest thing. You know, for a long time, I was like, I actually think it's downside in some ways that the tokens become non-legendary. Because a lot of the cool legendary dragons have death triggers. So I think they did that on purpose, so to make it weaker. But it's so
okay.
It's so busted, man. Like I have Miirym still put together technically, but I haven't played. I played it once last year, and I'm waiting to see what happens when we revisit Tarkir. See if we get a dragon commander I find more interesting, because I've always had a dragon deck, and I've had Miirym since it came out just because I thought it would be cool. But like in practice, it's too strong. It's too strong. Oh, green also gives you token doubler shenanigans too, so you can
do that
as well.
Doubles your tokens. Blue gives you clones to clone Miirym.
Yep. Yeah. So it's just oppressively strong. Ugh. It's really cool. That's why I gave it a B. But yeah, it's a little bit too strong. So I'm probably not going to have that deck together by the end of the year. I will probably have built a different dragon commander. But yeah, bottom of C for that one. Okay, next up we have, is it my turn to read? Lathril, Blade of the Elves. This is for 2, a green, and a black. 2/3 elf noble. It's from Kaldheim Commander, but for some reason it got reprinted in Foundation, so it's standard legal. But anyways, it has menace, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you create that many 1/1 green elf warrior tokens, and you can tap it and tap 10 untapped elves you control to drain the table for 10. I don't find this interesting at all. I gave it a C. Jason gave it an A. Preston also gave it a C. I find elf decks incredibly boring. I like the idea here in that there aren't that many good black elves, but the ones that do exist are like this kind of like draining effect. Because otherwise elf is just like, oh, make more mana, make more mana, make more mana. And this is like, okay, this is a potential win con. So that's kind of nice. If you're going to play elves, I think you have to either play Lathril or one of the other Golgari options. But with that said, I still just don't find it very interesting. So, yeah.
See, I was higher on this than you guys were because I think that is a more fun elf deck to play against. Because it's Lathril trying to deal combat damage.
I don't care about that part. No, you don't care about that part.
I don't know if I feel like you care about it a little bit.
I mean, it'll sometimes happen. You'll have some player at the table who doesn't have any creatures, or they only have one creature, and you can get him because of the menace. But you're playing elves. You don't have a hard time making elf tokens.
You're not playing it because you get to make 2 elves if you maybe hit with your commander.
The one thing
for the second ability.
I think that it's the best elf commander to play. That's just me personally. I will say the one thing that might make me knock it down from an A to a B is the fact that it doesn't have vigilance, so you can either attack with it or activate its ability, which I think is good because it kind of tames the commander a little bit instead of being able to do both those things at once.
Yeah, it would be a lot better if it's like
obviously
I need 2 more elves.
Obviously makes it not as good.
I don't know. If I'm going to play Golgari Elves, I'm playing Abomination of Llanowar. I think that's cooler.
All right. Lathril. Go in here and see. But speaking of really dumb, we're going to sound like hypocrites. Speaking of really dumb typal commanders, Preston, what have we got next?
Hey, we're in the top 5.
Oh, yeah. Hey. So we have one of the best commanders ever. It's Krenko Mob Boss. For 2 and 2 red, it's a 3/3 legendary creature goblin warrior. And it's a very simple card. You tap it, you make X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, where X is the number of goblins you currently control. It's goblins. Goblins are just elves but cool. Because you're playing red, which means you're actually giving up something to do your dumb creature nonsense.
Not in this case, you're not.
Well,
what are you giving up?
Okay.
What are you
the
giving up?
rest of the 99?
Yeah. Yeah, because in green, you have your ramp, you have Guardian Project
token
kind of
doublers,
effects, and yeah, you actually, like, there's a big difference.
Creature recursion.
But
Krenko is a token doubler.
I guess.
What do you mean you guess?
That's the only one, though.
So Jason and I gave Krenko a B, and Preston gave it an A. I find goblins way more interesting than elves because they're actually dealing damage. I think the biggest knock against Krenko is like a good Krenko game is absurd. A bad Krenko game, and like you'll never attack that player until it's a 1v1 because you feel so sorry for them. Like it's so dynamic. But yeah, I mean, you get like a lightning greaves or something, you get to do it right away, or especially if you already have a decent board. There's combos with it. Like there's ways that you can like, oh, I tap it, oh, now I untap it, now I tap it again, and you just make infinite goblins, and then you have like a goblin barbarman out or something, and you can just sack them all for damage and win right away. So like, it has everything across the spectrum of I'm playing this as fairly as possible, goblins go burr, to I'm comboing off on turn 4, goblins go burr. And it's kind of fun. So B feels appropriate. Yeah. It's also just like medium power level on average. Yeah.
No, it's not medium power level on
Yes, it
average.
is.
It's a
Dude,
higher
it's-
power level than
No.
that.
It's fallen off so much, dude.
Mono red is the
I've
worst
had this
color.
deck for years.
Mono red is the worst color in Commander, by far.
This
Think
used to be
about-
one of the best decks in our group. It's just not anymore.
You talk
And,
about how easy it is to get elves out on the battlefield to make elf
Yeah.
tokens. It's arguably just as easy to make goblin tokens.
No, it's not.
But you,
Oh, okay,
First of all, no.
whatever.
red doesn't have 8 different token doublers or triplers. And
Yeah, but all the cards
you
that
board-
make goblin tokens are one
okay,
or two
okay,
mana.
but in red, your ramp isn't as good. Your card draw is not as good. Green has really good ramp.
That's
and
totally
really
not-
good card draw. Ramp
Okay,
and card draw
the
in red are
ramp-
not as good.
The ramp, I will agree with you, is not as good. The card draw, I mean, if you're just specifically going to call it card draw, sure. But the card advantage and the card selection that you can get in red is arguably just as good.
Okay, but Jason, the problem with mono red is when you are down to 1 or 2 cards, red stops drawing cards right. You can't do anything.
Yeah.
Because either you draw and discard the thing you just drew, or you discard a card you don't have to draw.
Yeah, red.
Like once your hand runs out, you don't have anything to do.
Red gets down to
Green doesn't have that problem.
Red gets down to top deck mode. Red gets down to top deck mode, and they are like praying for their wheel so that they can force everyone to discard their hands and draw a new 7. Like that's their best case scenario, and that's kind of sad because you don't want to give your opponents a fresh hand either. So, but that's just red.
And wheels are expensive.
Yeah. So all that to say is there's a big trade-off in playing goblins instead of elves, but to me and Preston, that makes them more interesting. So we'll put Krenko here in B. All right. Next up, we have what, Jason?
So this is Kenrith the Returned King. It's a 5/5 human noble for 4 and a white, and it also has word vomit. So for 1 red, it has 5 different activated abilities. First one is for 1 red, all creatures gain trample and haste until end of turn. For 1 and a green, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. For 2 and a white, you can have target player gain 5 life. For 3 and a blue, you can have target player draw a card. And then for 4 and a black, you can put target creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under its owner's control. Morgan and I think we... Wait. Oh, no. Preston and Morgan both gave it a B, and I gave it an A. So I gave it an A because I think that it's a fun deck to play because you can target things that aren't yours and play it politically and get some advantage from your opponents. You can play it solely like for your stuff and only target your stuff with it. There's a lot of different ways that you can build Kenrith. I think that the versatility of it is really what pushed it over the edge for me. I know Morgan had a Kenrith deck. You don't still have that, do you?
Yep. It
Okay.
It's a group hug / politics deck. So I actually like heavily lean into making deals with people, and I have like cost reducers and stuff like training grounds and stuff in the deck, so that it's easier for me.
I was going to
to
talk about training grounds. Yeah.
The reason I don't have it higher is because while I think it's cool if you want to do stuff like that, like if you specifically want to take it the politics route, I think it's really cool. But a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people are just playing it for 5-color good stuff because it's like, I just need 5-color generic commander. This is really flexible. It'll be different things for me at different times when the right time comes up. And that's not interesting to me. So if you play it the politics route, epic. Love it. I have it myself. One of my favorite decks. But it as 5-color good stuff, I don't really like it. It's kind of boring.
Yeah, so for me, whenever someone says they have a Kenrith deck, the way they introduce it will usually tell me if I'm going to like it. If they introduce it as a Kenrith deck, I'm probably going to like whatever they did with it, because they actually chose an ability or two on there, specifically built the deck around that and did something fun. But if they're like, oh, I just built a 5-color deck, yeah, it's probably going to be kind of boring.
Well, Preston's talked about maybe doing like a monarch deck, like a deck that like almost every card cares about the monarch, and like just have Kenrith
Monarch
as the
/
commander.
voting.
Yeah, and have Kenrith as the commander
Because
just for flavor.
they're both a little weak, but
Yeah. Which I think that would be okay. But all that to say, Kenrith is a B. Next up, hate this card. Yuriko the Tiger's Shadow. For 1, a blue and a black. It's a 1/3 human ninja with commander ninjutsu. For a blue and a black. Meaning you can return an unblocked attacker you control to hand and put this card onto the battlefield from your hand or the command zone, tapped and attacking. Then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you reveal the top card of your library and put that card in your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to that card's converted mana cost. So the reason this card is so popular is largely just because people think ninjas are cool and people think ninjutsu is a cool mechanic, those are both factually correct. Ninjas are cool and ninjutsu is a cool ability. The problem is that it's actually oppressive. Commander ninjutsu is a problematic ability. That means you can't ever really deal with it, and that just sucks. On top of the fact that it does have CDH fringe playability, or just really high power curb stompy kind of playability, in the fact that there's plenty of cards that care about top deck manipulation. You can easily set up the top of your library so when you do that flip and that reveal, you're going to deal a ton of damage to your opponents, end the game really, really fast. So I'm not a fan. I gave it a C. Jason gave it a B. Preston with an F.
yeah, you can't stop the deck once it gets going. You're playing the scry color, so you can always keep whatever you want at the top of the deck that's going to deal 1,000,000 damage. It's just not fun.
I just disagree. I've played plenty of games against people who play Yuriko, and they did not win every single one of those games. 1 or 2 of those games, maybe 3 of those games, yeah, they probably won. But Yuriko isn't... It looks scarier than it actually plays most of the time.
What? No, it's scarier than it looks, because at first you're just like, oh, ninjas, and then it's like, it's scary.
I'm telling you, I've played against Yuriko a lot. I am not afraid of Yuriko when I see Yuriko at the table. Because it has the same thing that Gishath has, where unless you're manipulating the top of your deck, you can just whiff. And I guarantee you're gonna whiff more with Yuriko than you will with Gishath.
Gishath is 8 mana. Yuriko is 2 the entire game. What are you talking about, brother? Please. You need to stop saying these things. Jason someone who's 99 was 90.
Okay. So I'm just gonna completely discount the experiences I've had playing against a CEDH level Yuriko deck, and have beaten that deck with not CEDH decks.
Oh, no.
I'm just gonna completely forget the experiences that I've had, and you are 100% right, Preston. I will just forget that I said anything whatsoever.
No, we have video evidence of that being true. Like, we had the second newest episode of Upkeep, I think, second or third newest episode. We tried CEDH. There was a Yuriko deck. The Yuriko deck did not win. We played 2 games. The Yuriko deck did not win either of them. So I'm not saying that Jason's wrong per se, but it's just I think that through the context of the games in which he played against Yuriko, that has heavily clouded his judgment. He's not wrong, but
it's not even just those games. There's somebody in the play group that I play with my sister and my brother-in-law that has a Yuriko deck and plays it basically every single time that we play. That person does not win the game every single time that we play. You will whiff more with Yuriko than you will with Gishath, because you're only revealing the top card of your library, and if you're not manipulating the top card of your library, you don't know what's going to be there. You don't know if it's going to be an 8 mana spell that's going to deal 8 damage to everybody, or if it's going to be a land. You don't know. You have a much higher chance of hitting something useful with Gishath than you do with Yuriko. Guaranteed.
Probably...
That is unquestionable. The math favors what I'm saying.
Okay, so I agree with that, and I think that's amplified by the large percentage of Yuriko decks that are probably just filthy casuals who think ninjas are cool, in which case what Jason says is even more true. So it's mostly a problem when you're trying to sweat it out with like top deck manipulation. That becomes really problematic. But it's always going to be a semi-problematic commander because it's 2-mana ninjutsu from the command zone that always gets around commander attacks. That's I think the bigger offender, more so than how much damage you're going to take off of the reveal.
Here's the thing about the commander ninjutsu, though. Like, obviously, they're probably going to be playing some stuff that can't be blocked, and so you're going to be able to get it out that way. But as long as you can block and have something that will be able to block, they're not going to be able to play Yuriko every time. They're going to have to be relying on stuff that is unblocked or cannot be blocked in order to get Yuriko out.
Yeah. Well, Yuriko will end up here in bottom of C. We are more tolerant of it if it is literally ninja deck, but otherwise accidentally too good. Preston, what do we got next?
Well, Jason's going to be glad about this one. We have the Dragon now for 4 and 1 of each color. It's a dragon avatar, legendary creature, 10/10 with eminence, but this one is as long as Dragon is in the command zone or on the battlefield, other dragon spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. It has flying, shockingly enough, and when one or more dragons you control attack, draw that many cards, then you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. So Morgan gave it a B, Jason gave it an S, I gave it a C.
I think B is like... to me, this is like a perfectly B commander in the sense of like it does what it needs to do. It's kind of ramp. It's kind of card draw. But it's a lot of mana if you're going to do the card draw part. But like dragons are a lot of mana. So like I think that like, yes, I don't like Eminence. But this is another one of the examples of Eminence that I'm like, it could be worse, I guess. To me, it mostly just comes down... So it does the job, is what I'm trying to say. To me, it's more of just, I want more restrictions. Because there are so many cool dragon decks. Why is Miirym my commander instead of Dragon? It's because if you go into 5-color, you can't fit all the cool dragons in there, man. Because across all 5 colors, there's just too many cool ones. So, like, yeah, I agree that Dragon is just, like, generically powerful. And if, like... you just want to play your favorite dragons, that's perfectly cool. But by cutting a couple colors out, you just open yourself up to some other dragons you might not play otherwise. And to me, that's just like personally a little more interesting. But I feel like it's a perfectly good B commander.
I'm definitely more biased on this one. I have had Dragon for a long time. I bought the like one of the first sets of Secret Lairs that came out, the Kaleidoscope Killers one with Dragon in it. I love that card. I think it's a beautiful card, and I think that Dragon is just a really, really cool dragon commander. I think he's the best, and I would argue he is the most interesting dragon commander. I get what you're saying about when you take away colors, you're forcing yourself to play dragons that you might not normally play. You could still just do that. Like, you could build this deck in a way where all of the dragons you have are interchangeable and you could switch them out for other dragons, and then the deck is still dragons, but maybe it's doing something that's drastically different than what it was doing before.
Which building decks that way is really, really cool and really fun. It is more maintenance. It is more upkeep and stuff to keep track of, but it is cool and fun to build decks that way.
And the one thing that I'll say is that Dragon, when it actually gets going, it's really, really, really hard to stop it. But because it's a 9-mana commander, even though it has green, even though that's the case, it's still gonna take you a while to get Dragon going. I've played plenty of games with Dragon where I don't cast Dragon until turn 6 or 7. And that's fine. That's fine. And the other thing about it is, for the other players at the table, they know Dragon is coming. Like if you're paying attention and you're seeing, okay, they have this many lands on the battlefield, they have this many artifacts, access to this much mana, I can expect Dragon next turn, the turn after that, this turn, whatever. You have time to plan for it. And it's still one of those ones where if everyone knows that Dragon is coming onto the battlefield, as long as there's not somebody else that's doing anything too crazy or oppressive, you all know who you have to go after. Which I think that's one of the things that balances Dragon out, is the fact that everyone knows who the real enemy is. It's the Dragon player.
Yeah, I think that's valid. Was there anything else to add to that, Preston? Or
dragons are just lamer dinosaurs.
oh,
it's just not true. It's just false.
We'll put our dragon here in like middle of B, I guess. All right, last commander, number 1 commander of all time according to EDHRec. Jason, what is it?
Sorry, my laptop. I have 20% battery left, but we'll be fine. We'll be fine. So, the number 1 commander, according to EDHRec, is Atraxa, Praetor's Voice. It is a 4/4 legendary creature, Angel Horror, for a green, a white, a blue, and a black. It has flying, vigilance, death touch, and lifelink, and it says at the beginning of your end step, proliferate. This was a lot of Commander players' boogeyman for many years. When this came out, what Commander set was this with?
Commander 16, I want to say. Yeah.
Commander 16. when this came out, this was a lot of people's boogeyman. Nobody really liked playing against it. Everybody really hated it, because the way that a lot of people built it back in the day was poison counters. Just proliferating poison counters onto players and killing them that way. Now I think with the crazy amount of other counters that people can use, there's a lot of different ways to build Atraxa. There's a lot of different ways to utilize that proliferate. It's by itself, without that ability, an inherently strong commander. It's a 4/4 that has 4 keyword abilities that are very, very useful: flying, vigilance, death touch, lifelink. So it's going to gain you life. It's going to kill basically everything that it comes into contact with. And you're able to swing with it and hold it up as a blocker. It has flying, so you're going to get that evasion from it. And then the really, really cool part about this is that it's 4 colors. Not many commanders are 4 colors that aren't partner commanders. I think that there's a lot of fun, unique deck buildings for this, especially now that a couple years have passed since it came out, and there's a lot of different types of counters to play with. So Preston and I gave it a B, but Morgan gave it an A. I don't know that I like it enough to put it up at an A, because I still get nervous every time I see an Atraxa deck that I'm going to die to poison counters.
I think that's a healthy dosage of fear that you need in your life to remind yourself that your heart's still beating. Okay, so let me defend A. I like a lot of these early commanders from the early precons that Wizards made. Like Kaalia the Vast was in this category as well. Like commanders that you could build them multiple ways. I just kind of tend to like those more. So Atraxa definitely has ways that are better and worse to build it, but that just kind of doesn't really matter. So like the energy deck that I just talked about earlier in the episode, the original commander for it was Atraxa because energy counter, so I can proliferate those. I think the original precon was mostly a +1/+1 counter deck, but you can also go, you can do either of those, but yes, Jason's right, you can do poison. You could do stun counters, so you can kind of go like a control build. You can do planeswalkers with the loyalty counters.
Experience
counters. That's freaking cool. How many?
There's even like death touch counters, flying counters. I know Ikoria gave us a lot of that type of stuff.
Ikoria gave us a lot of weird counters. I'm not sure what. Well, I guess there's cards that like let you move counters around. Okay, yeah, there's probably something you could do there. So point being is that like Atraxa is just a decent 4-mana commander. It's in 4 colors, which like Jason said, there's just not that many 4-color commanders. So I just kind of like that it's open-ended. There's a lot of, and you could just do like a mix. Like if you just want to play like my favorite infect cards with my favorite energy cards, like that's probably not going to be the best deck, but you definitely could do that, you know, like I just like these more open-ended commanders. So yeah, A for me.
There's one cycle of I go ahead and talk, Preston, for a second. I'm trying to look this up because I want to talk about it.
I was just gonna mostly agree. Like, depending on what version of the deck you build, I can probably change my grading. But on average, I think B is good. You know, I actually think +1/+1 counters is probably the strongest Atraxa deck at this point. But Infect isn't fun when you're doing Proliferate. Planeswalkers can be really fun, can be really oppressive, depends on the group and what Planeswalkers you run, but it can also be pretty interesting. Energy is, fun. So, yeah. If you choose one of the more niche options, I definitely think this can be a really fun deck. Don't do Infect. Don't be that guy. Be a good person.
So, the cycle of cards that I wanted to bring up that go really that you can do really cool stuff with Atraxa is the Myojin cards. The one like Myojin of Life's Web or Myojin of Infinite Rage. You know, it comes into play. They come into play with divinity counters on them if you play it from your hand, and then you can remove a divinity counter from it to get some crazy effect.
Oh, that's
like,
actually really
for example,
funny.
Myojin of Life's Web. It says remove. So Myojin of Life's Web has indestructible as long as it has a divinity counter on it. Basically, all of them say that. And then it says remove a divinity counter from Myojin of Life's Web. Put any number of creature cards from your hand into play. So with Atraxa, you could proliferate those types of counters and then get those effects multiple times. The one you don't want to do, actually you can't do it in Atraxa, never mind, so I won't even talk about it, because it's a bad thing to do. But then you'd have like Myojin of Seeing Winds. It's remove a divinity counter from Myojin of Seeing Winds. Draw a card for each permanent you control. Like, there's just fun stuff you could do like that.
Though, that being
Sagas?
said... Yeah, oh, that's really cool. You get to spin through your sagas faster. Oh, that's really cool.
I didn't think about that.
Okay, so not to ruin Preston's day or anything about Atraxa, but of the 35,909 decks on EDHRec with Atraxa as the commander, the number one category with 14,000 is Infect.
Yes, I figured.
So, Atraxa
I knew that was probably going to be it, but...
All right, guys, that does it. We have officially, over the course of a few episodes, gone over the top 100 commanders according to EDHRec. And today, we hit the top 20. If you haven't seen the other 4 parts of this series, go check them out. They were like this. They were good conversations about popular, fun, interesting commanders. We will be back next week for another topic. And make sure to let us know in the comments what you think of our list. Do you hate it? Do you love it? Let us know. We'll see you guys later.
Let us know which commander is your favorite.
What is your number one commander of all time, regardless of what EDHRec says? We will see you guys next time. Bye.